February 20th meeting of the St. Bernard Village Council will please come to order. We invite you to stand for the prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Our Father, who art in heaven, as a body we congregate in this council chambers for the betterment of our fellow citizens. Lead us that we may do all things well. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Morton is absent. Mr. Stuchel?
Present.
Mr. Edwards?
Present.
Ms. Hausfeld? Here. Mr. Schuldmeier?
Present.
Mr. Culbertson?
Present.
And Mr. Estep?
Present.
Let the record show 6 members are present, 1 member is absent. Members of council, what is your pleasure on the reading of the last minutes?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Culbertson to dispense with the reading of the last minutes. Are there any remarks? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Members of council, are there any errors or corrections to the minutes as submitted? Not, the minutes will stand as submitted. We'll move to reports of city officials. Mayor Stuchel.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you may have already heard, our Director of Public Services and Safety, Tim Wordman, has decided to take another position after serving the village of St. Bernard for the last 8 months. Tim's last day of service to the village will be March 28th, and I truly wish him the best in his future endeavors. Even though Tim was only with us for a short time, he has made a positive impact in so many areas, but I am confident that we'll be all right. I have secured a very seasoned professional to serve in an interim capacity by the name of Tim Williams, who has 36 years of experience in local government. His areas of expertise in local government management include budget and personnel management, economic development and recruitment, experience in project management, building renovations, water and sewer plants, greenway trails, telecommunications and technology implementations, team leadership, intergovernmental relations, planning and goal setting for boards of zoning administration, staff development, special events development, and coordination. He was the former longtime city manager for the city of Crestview Hills, Kentucky, and most recently served as the township administrator for Pierce Township. He will be under a 6-month contract as the interim director of public services and safety, where he will focus on continued operations, assessing the overall management of City Hall and our village departments, and will be assisting our consultant, Mike Hinnenkamp, and our interview team consisting of Chris Schulmeyer, Connor Morton, and Chris Sauer with the search for our next candidate. I am looking forward to working with Tim and truly value the level of expertise that he has and brings to the table. But most importantly, Tim Wordman always concluded all of his emails with TW, so I had no choice but to find someone with the same initials. So with that being said, I'm going to be preparing a contract for Tim Williams, who plans to start on March 26th, and I will need to request a special council meeting to pass the corresponding ordinance for his contract that will be forwarded to all of you next week. Again, I'd like to remind all of you about the annual Day of Caring Pancake Breakfast that will be held this Sunday, February 23rd from 10:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the St. Clement School cafeteria. They'll be serving pancakes with homemade mixed berry syrup, scrambled eggs, sausage, fresh fruit, and yogurt. And this is a free will donation event, and all proceeds go to the St. Clement Food Pantry. Lastly, the next CIC meeting will be held this Tuesday, February 25th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers and is open to the public. There is an opportunity to learn more about current and future projects where questions and answers are welcome. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Auditor, Ms. Brickwig.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Auditor's Office has prepared a resolution and ordinance for tonight's meeting. The first one being Resolution 2, 2025. This is the first resolution that is needed for the renewal of the levy. It authorizes a renewal of a 7 mil tax levy on the current real property tax rate for real property located within the village of St. Bernard. And then after this one is, if it's approved, I will send it off to the county. They will then send me back the amount of money that will be collected if the levy passes, and there'll be another resolution to vote on once those rates come in. I can tell you 5 years ago when we did it, it brought about $540,000 into the village. The second is ordinance number 4, 2025. This ordinance authorizes the auditor to transfer $8,000 from the general fund to the Criminal Act forfeiture cash account. And it also includes the money for the demolition of the shopping center, which we will be reimbursed. It will be going into 05 MP 10A for $339,000. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Director of Law, Ms. Van Valkenburg.
Thank you. You have before you ordinances number 6 and 7 that were prepared. This is the matter Mr. Porton had brought to the council about energy aggregation, contact with the agency that he brought in to speak with us about this, and they assisted with the drafting of the ordinance. They actually recommended doing it as one relating to electric aggregation, one relating to natural gas aggregation. This is what's required to put this on the ballot. That was, as they explained, that's kind of the first step. That doesn't commit us to doing anything. If it goes down, obviously it goes down, but if it goes forward, then there were talks about public hearings and other things that had to be taken care of. So this doesn't commit us on anything. This just puts it on the ballot. And I was speaking with Ms. Brigwig earlier. I guess there's going to be a special election in August. If we pass this now, this would allow us to get it on that August ballot date. So that's the date that you have and that you see in these ordinances. That concludes my report. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Thank you. Report from the treasurer? Nothing? Okay. Report from Tim? Nothing. Tax Administrator, Ms. Helms.
Thanks, Mr. President. I don't really have a report, just a reminder that your taxes for St. Bernard are due the same day as your federal and state, April 15th. And also just a reminder that by law, you're required to sign your tax return. You're required to attach your W-2s, page 1 through 3 of your federal 1040 and any federal schedules. That's either the paper version or the e-file version. You have to include that paperwork so your return can be audited. Otherwise, we have to mail out reminders, which cost postage, and try to keep that down. That concludes my report.
Thank you. We'll move to reports of standing committees. Service, Mr. Gus Stuchel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the waste collection fee reports for December 2024 and January 2025. In December 2024, $23,917.85 was remitted to the village. In January of 2025, $24,576.07 was remitted to the village. For the waste collection report for January 2025, the service department completed the following: 19 dump trucks placed at residence, 11 dumpsters placed at residence, 64 special pickups, 206.55 tons of garbage taken to landfill, 25.3 tons of recycling material sent to Rumpke, 2,780 pounds of scrap material sent to the scrap yard, 30 cubic yards of yard waste composted, 267 tons of salt spread throughout the village for snow and ice removal, and the salt supply has been replenished with over 300 tons in preparation for future snow events. And again, please mark your calendars for Clean Up St. Bernard Day for Saturday, April 26th, and the time of the event is to be determined. And our next shred day, Saturday, May 24th, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Safety Center. And lastly, another reminder that the Service Department is still accepting applications for seasonal employment. All applicants must be at least 16 years old and hold a valid driver's license. Thank you. That concludes that of my report.
Thank you. Public Improvements, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. President. There was no need for a Public Improvement Committee meeting this week, but I would like to report on possibly the best program I've experienced at the St. Bernard Ludlow Grove monthly meeting. Peter Bronson was the presenter. He's a former columnist at the Cincinnati Enquirer and the author of several books on concerning the Cincinnati area. The program on Monday, which was President's Day, was on presidents that affected the settlement and growth of the Cincinnati area. Talked about how President Washington sent troops to protect our settlers from the local Indians who were being paid by the British for scalps and prisoners, with the hope that the United States would give up settling the Northwest Territory and it could become part of Canada. It talked about how Abraham Lincoln was almost assassinated with a bomb on a train in Cincinnati on his way to his first inauguration, but the bomb was discovered before it exploded. He talked about General Lew Wallace, who defended Cincinnati from the Confederates and later wrote Ben-Hur. He gave us so much information, I almost forgot that with his research on a mob in Newport that they were probably involved in the President Kennedy assassination. If you missed it, you missed a lot. The reason I enjoy reporting on the St. Bernard Ludlow Grove program is that I believe it is very important for St. Bernard residents to know our local history, to have the pride in our community, a sense of ownership, so that every resident will feel the responsibility to take our village, to make our village the best it possibly can be. The St. Bernard Ludlow Grove meeting are on the third Monday of every month at 7 p.m. in the main hall of the municipal building. Thank you, Mr. President. This concludes my report.
Thank you. Safety, Ms. Hausfeld.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight I have both the police and fire department report. For the month of January, the police department had 686 calls for service, resulting in 554 contacts. There were an additional 492 other services, details that were not necessarily called in by the public. These calls for service included 69 total criminal offenses, resulting in 78 criminal arrests, 39 traffic citations, and 80 traffic warnings. 2 of these traffic arrests were OVIs. They responded to 11 accidents as well, 2 of which included injuries. And then as far as the chief's news and notes for the public, they wanted everybody to know that Officer Ryan Jackson has resigned his position as a police officer for St. Bernard. We thank him for his service to the village and wish him well in his future endeavors. Also, Lieutenant Bill Ungary will be retiring in June. If you get out the opportunity to see Bill, wish him well and thank him for his nearly 30 years of service to the village. That concludes the police department report. I also have the fire department report for January 2025. Fire incidents, structural fires 12, other fires 2, vehicle fires 1, auto accidents 2, hazmat incidents 4, service calls 11, fire alarms 26, CO alarms 3, EMS assists 13, total 74. Mutual aid given, Elmwood Place 3, Norwood 11, Reading 3, Lockland 2, Deer Park 2, North College Hill 2, Springfield Township 1, Delhi 1. Mutual aid received, Lockland 2. Norwood, Ladder 82, Springfield Township Quint 79, and Deer Park Silverton Quint 89 were all out of service for this period of time in January, which accounted for some additional mutual aid dispatches. EMS incidents, transports 56, non-transports 56, total of 112. Mutual aid given, Elmwood Place 8, Norwood 5, Deer Park 1, Springfield Township 1, Evendale 1. All personnel completed the annual air conception drill, all level A hazmat suits tested, several hazmat responses items replaced or added. All personnel and service police officers attended the Hamilton County Public Health Substance Addiction Training hosted here at the Safety Center. And those conclude both my reports, Mr. President.
Thank you. Laws, contracts, and claims, Mr. Schultmeyer.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Marketing, Mr. Culbertson.
No report.
Thank you. Business and industry, Mr. Estep.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to thank the 2 paramedics who showed up last Friday at Del Mar and Zeta. There's a lady laying in the street, halfway in the street and on the sidewalk, and we tried to get her up. No success there, so we called the ambulance. They came up. They were very professional, prompt, and everything went well. And I did call Chief Young and told him that pass the thank you along. Concludes my report.
Thank you. Committee of the Whole, Ms. Stegman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Minutes were submitted yesterday, and I have no communications this evening.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion before we start the resolutions and ordinances to place ordinance 8 on the table. It's an email that we received from the village clerk today about a codified ordinance update.
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'll make a motion to place ordinance number 8 on the table.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Culbertson to place ordinance number 8, 2025 on the table. Are there any remarks? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So ordered. All right, clerk, will you please give the first reading of resolution number 2, 2025?
Resolution number 2, 2025, resolution authorizing a renewal 7 mil tax levy on the current real property tax rate for real property located within the village of St. Bernard, certifying said resolution to the Hamilton County Auditor and declaring an emergency.
Members of council, you've heard the first reading of resolution number 2, 2025. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend with the second and third reading of resolution number 2.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Culbertson to suspend with the second and third reading of resolution number 2, 2025. Are there any remarks?
Yes, Mr. President.
Mr. Restat.
I'd like to see this go regular course. This was a levy put on the ballot years ago when we were in financial straits, and it's been renewed several times. And I made a note, I think we're taking in over $15 million this year for the same number of people we had a few years ago when it was a little over 10 million. No slam on anybody. I think everything's going pretty well, but I think it's time to give something back to the taxpayers. And I think it's time to take that levy off the ballot and move forward with what we have. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Brickwick.
a few comments to that. If you do an emergency, we can't even put it on the ballot. Because as I explained, it's a two-part process, so it would have to go emergency so we can take care of the next part. We are not bringing in, if you remember correctly, we're not bringing in 15 million. We're using some of our reserves for that when that was discussed at detail. And I'm just gonna be very honest, with the two businesses that just left in this money, you'll be $1 million in the hole. And we all know the only way for $1 million is layoffs. I'll just say it the way it is, and that's the reason you put it on as the mayor when you did. So the numbers are not the same. As you said, those numbers are not correct, but, I mean, it will be up to you, but, and what we're doing is we're asking the citizens to vote on it, not council to vote on it. It's to put it up to them. Do you want to continue with your services or not? But with the two major businesses leaving in this, that would be a huge deficit for us to overcome. So I recommend you please pass it emergency and let the residents decide what they want to do. Thank you.
Any other remarks?
Mr. President?
Mr. Estes.
I was wondering if we could even put it on call command and have some input from residents, let them know what we're talking about here. Give them a little heads up out of fairness to the residents.
Mr. President,
Ms.
John,
Brickwick.
I don't know if you're confused. This is just putting it on the ballot. Well, then vote, then you can vote no, but it's, and then you can, I would love to hear how you're gonna find $1 million in cuts. But this is the citizens to vote on. That's all I'm asking you is to put it on the ballot. That's it, just like we did when you needed to put it on, same thing.
Any other remarks? If not, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. President, I'm sorry.
Ms. Brickwick.
I would like to ask that since we are missing a member in order to, if you don't want it on the ballot, that's fine. I understand that. But it would be nice if we could have 6 votes for at least to go to emergency so the citizens have the option to at least vote on it. Otherwise, I will not have time to get this done if we don't have 6 votes for emergency. And you can still vote no on the ordinance, though.
All right. Clerk, will you call the roll on suspension?
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schuldmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estes?
No.
5 ayes, 1 nay. Motion does not carry. Motion will go regular course. That's it on the resolution. 2. Clerk, will you please give the first reading of ordinance number 3, 2025?
Ordinance number 3, 2025, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Safety and Service to enter into a contract with O'Rourke Wrecking Company for the demolition of buildings located at 4901 and 4932 to 5021 Vine Street and declaring an emergency.
Members of council, you've heard the first reading of ordinance number 3, 2025. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 3, 2025.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Estep to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 3, 2025. Are there any remarks? If not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance number 3? If not, clerk, will you call the roll on suspension?
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schuldmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Members of council, what is your pleasure on adoption?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 3, 2025.
Second that.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Culbertson to adopt ordinance number 3, 2025. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schuldmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance number 3, 2025 is adopted as read. Clerk, will you please give the first reading of ordinance number 4, 2025?
Ordinance number 4, 2025, authorizing and directing the auditor to transfer funds and additional appropriation funds for declaring an emergency.
Members of council, you've heard the first reading of ordinance number 4, 2025. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 5, 2024.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Estep to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 4, 2025. Are there any remarks? Not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance 4? If not, clerk, will you call the roll on suspension?
Mr. President,
Mr.
I
Schultmeyer.
think I inadvertently said 5. I meant 4.
I corrected you.
Thank you.
I got you. Clerk, call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schuldmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Members of council, what is your pleasure on adoption?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 4,
I'll second.
2025.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Estep to adopt ordinance number 4, 2025. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schuldmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance number 4, 2025 is adopted as read. Clerk, will you please give the first reading of ordinance number 5, 2025?
Ordinance number 5, 2025, fixing the compensation of those part-time and certain appointed employees of the Village of St. Bernard and declaring an emergency.
Members of council, you've heard the first reading of ordinance number 5, 2025. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 5, 2025.
I'll second.
that, Mr. President.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Ms. Hausfeld to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 5, 2025. Are there any remarks? Not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance 5? If not, clerk, will you please call the roll on suspension?
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schuldmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Members of council, what is your pleasure on adoption?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 5, 2025.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Estep to adopt ordinance number 5, 2025. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schuldmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance number 5, 2025 is adopted as read. Clerk, will you please give the first reading of ordinance number 6, 2025?
Mr. President?
Van Valkenburg.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just, if I could ask a question of Ms. Bergwig, if, with your ordinance not passing, will we have a need for a special election in August? Because I picked the date that's in this, in ordinance number 6 and 7 based on that. I don't know if we want to go to the expense of incurring a special election, if it's not already going to be on the ballot. Not to say that we couldn't move it to the November date.
Mr. President,
Ms. Berkowitz.
I will leave this up to council, because we're playing, I'm gonna be honest, playing the games we always play around here, making life difficult. Could someone on council motion to have a special meeting to have the second reading on March 12th, and then, that's a Wednesday, and then on that Thursday, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Patty. I don't know what else to, you rolled your eyes about the special meeting, and I feel bad. I don't want to ask you guys to do this, but I don't want to see employees get laid off either, I'm gonna be honest. And all I needed it was to go emergency.
Mr.
we
President,
do the
make
12th and the
this simple.
13th?
So basically, we're going to be asking for a special meeting to be held immediately following, or at 7:30, the night of the next committee of the whole, for the contract for our interim Director of Public Services and Safety. Could we add that resolution
Right,
for the
but
second reading?
I don't, John will probably, if he votes no and we get another one, you're still gonna be in the same situation. It would have to have 3 readings.
You're gonna have 7 members here for that meeting.
We're 100% sure
Well,
on that.
Well, we're not, but if not.
Okay, well, let's
so we
find
can-
that out. If not, then that would work perfect. But if not, if we could add the 12th also, and then you'll be okay. Because like I said, this is not voting on the levy, it's just putting it on the ballot. So then you should be okay with yours to go through. Man, this is getting confusing.
If you wanna play it safe, you could call another special council meeting for 7:45 on the 13th to discuss Resolution 2 if needed. Then you have your 3 readings.
You would have 2 meetings on the 13th?
Correct,
We
if
can do
needed.
that? Okay.
That's why I say if needed.
So why don't we, I'm sorry, Mr. President, why don't we just go regular course at this point with that one, and it can
Yes.
follow along?
Yeah.
Your ordinances, would that work?
Well, we can do it by, if we can do it by emergency tonight, it doesn't make any difference. My concern was the August date.
Okay, okay.
I just didn't want us to incur the expense
Right,
that
say-
we would
I
incur.
agree.
But if it looks like maybe we can proceed with the August date,
Yeah.
I would ask that we just move forward with 6 and 7, thank you,
What,
as they're
I'm
written.
sorry, and Mr. President,
Yeah.
we can just ask council's thoughts on that.
If the mayor can add it to the mayor can call special council meeting, he's already done it. So if you wanna add it now or under old business, wherever you wanna.
Again, I would like to actually ask then for, so we're gonna add that then. Are we gonna do it at the same time? Does it need to be?
If you've already called a special council meeting for Thursday, March 13th, 7:30, to discuss the contract for Tim Williams. So if you want to add discussion on resolution number 2 to that meeting, and then call for another special council meeting
Alright.
at 7:45.
So, Mr. President, I would like to add for the resolution number 2, for special meeting.
And then 7:45
Yes.
if needed, okay. And I'm gonna assume that, will you let ICRC as well as I'll let the village
Yes.
clerk know to add it to the calendar. Okay, all right. Now let's get back to, clerk, will you please give the first reading of ordinance number 6, 2025?
Ordinance number 6, 2025, an ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to effect a governmental electric aggregation program with opt-out provisions pursuant to section 4928.20 Ohio Revised Code, directing the Hamilton County Board of Elections to submit a ballot question to the electors and declaring an emergency.
Members of council, you've heard the first reading of ordinance number 6, 2025. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'll make a motion to suspend on the second and third reading of ordinance number 6, 2025.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Estep to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 6, 2025. Are there any remarks?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
just a question for Valerie. Is there a impact if they both go on the ballot and ordinance number 6 passes and 7 fails, or 7 passes and 6 fails? Does that change the criteria that they laid out in their plan in the last meeting?
Well, that would give us the option to try it again in November, perhaps, if one of them failed and the other. Otherwise, I think we would just proceed with the one, because as I understood the way as they discussed it, this was a necessary prerequisite that it had to go before the ballot, to the voters on the ballot, and it had to pass. So if one of them doesn't pass and the other does, I think we could just proceed with the one.
I guess my question is, would they want to proceed, which is the one?
That's another
And would
question.
they do it under the same conditions?
I don't know. I don't remember that they discussed that, actually. I can certainly inquire about that, but I don't have that option to do tonight, and I don't have the information tonight, sorry. I do not have a response on that.
So would it make sense, since we have special meetings scheduled anyway, to allow that to go regular course, to allow you to
That-
just double,
that's fine.
triple check that we're not
Yes.
putting something on the ballot that's not beneficial?
I can double check with them, yes.
Then, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to allow ordinance number, what are we on, six?
Yeah.
To go regular course.
Second that.
A motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, second by Mr. Culbertson, to have ordinance number 6, 2025, go regular course. Seems like we've had remarks, but any other remarks? Anyone in the audience wish to address council on ordinance number 6? Clerk, will you please call the roll on the motion to go regular course?
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schulmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance number 6, 2025 will go as regular course. Clerk, will you please give the first reading of ordinance number 7, 2025?
Ordinance number 7, 2025, an ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to effect a governmental natural gas aggregation program with opt-out provisions pursuant of section 4929.26 Ohio Revised Code, directing the Hamilton County Board of Elections to submit a ballot question to the electors and declaring an emergency.
Members of council, you've heard the first reading of ordinance number 7, 2025. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I make a motion, we allow ordinance number 7, 2025 also to go regular course.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Estep, to have ordinance number 7, 2025 take its regular course. Are there any remarks? Not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance 7? Not, clerk, will you please call the roll on the motion to go regular course?
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schulmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance number 7, 2025 will take its regular course. And clerk, will you please give the first reading of ordinance number 8, 2025?
Ordinance number 8, 2025, an ordinance approving the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as part of the various component codes of the codified ordinances of the St. Bernard, Ohio, revising the traffic and general offenses codes to comply with state law and declaring an emergency.
Members of council, you've heard the first reading of ordinance number 8, 2025. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'll make a motion to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 8, 2025.
I'll second that, Mr. President.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Ms. Hausfeld, to suspend with the second and third reading of ordinance number 8, 2025. Are there any remarks? Not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council on ordinance 8? Ordinance 8, Tom. Sorry. This is for ordinance 8. I'll get, Tom, I'll get to audience participation in a minute. This is just on ordinance number 8. I'll get to it. Thanks. All right. Clerk, will you please call the roll on the suspension?
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld? Aye. Mr. Schulmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Members of council, what is your pleasure on adoption?
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 8, 2025.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Culbertson, to adopt ordinance number 8, 2025. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Stuchel?
Aye.
Mr. Edwards?
Aye.
Ms. Hausfeld?
Aye.
Mr. Schulmeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Culbertson?
Aye.
And Mr. Estep?
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Ordinance number 8, 2025 is adopted as read. All right. At this time, I will entertain a motion to add ordinances 6 and 7 to the special council meeting for their second reading.
Mr. President,
Mr. Schultmeyer, huh? That's already been done, yeah. Mr. Schultmeyer.
I'll make a motion to add ordinance number 6 and 7 to the table.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Schultmeyer, seconded by Mr. Culbertson, to add ordinances number 7 and 8 to the special council
6 and
meeting.
7.
Six
Sorry,
and 7.
6 and 7. ordinances 6 and 7 at the special council meeting on Thursday, March 13th at 7:30. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. And this time, does anyone on council have anything under old business? If not, does anyone have anything under new business? If not, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address council this evening?
Tom?
Please state your name and address for the record.
Task Force 309 Jackson. And as Peggy. Tax day April 17th, right?
Tax day?
Yeah. 15. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council? All right. What is council's pleasure on the absent member?
Mr. President, I make a motion we excuse the absent member.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Culbertson, second by Mr. Schultmeyer to excuse the absent member. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Then the next committee of the whole meeting will be on Thursday, March 13th at 7 p.m. with a special council meeting at 7:30 to discuss resolution number 2, ordinances number 6 and 7. I gotta quit listening to you, Mr. Schultmeyer. And I know there was something else in there.
And Mr. President, and the ordinance that's not numbered yet, but for,
For the contract.
Yes,
there
the
we go.
contract.
Okay. All right. Then, at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Mr. President,
Mr. Culbertson.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Culbertson, second by Mr. Stuchel. I knew it was in my left ear. To adjourn, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So ordered. We are adjourned.